Huntington Library is a lot more than books. There are drawings and letters, maps, photographs, and we've got lots of books here. There's a person and a story behind every one of them. To understand the words and the stories they left behind, you've got to ask questions. Come along as we explore the Huntington Library and learn that there's more to a library than meets the eye.
The book form begins in Europe in probably the 4th or 5th century. Up until then, people wrote on wax tablets, they wrote on clay tablets, they wrote on papyrus or leather wrapped up into a scroll. Books were made from the fall of the Roman Empire until the Renaissance by writing on parchment or vellum. Vellum means written on the skin of calf, parchment on the skin of sheep. Paper was invented in China in the 2nd century, but it isn't widely available in Western Europe until perhaps the 13th or 14th century. This is a good example of a medieval book. It is a whole series of those sheets of vellum or parchment bound together, and then it's bound between two oak boards that are covered with a piece of leather. So it gives you a pretty strong book. By the later Middle Ages, among the most common and also most beautiful books are what we call books of hours. They are decorated with vibrant colors, gold illuminated portraits, and these books would involve both a scribe to write the actual texts of prayers and an artist to do the decorated borders, and then a master artist to paint the miniature inside. It might take a year or so to be completed. They are really works of beautiful art, and they are in fact miniature paintings. The Huntington has perhaps 3,000 miniature medieval paintings in the form of these small miniatures in books.
Books were first printed, at least in Europe, around 1450. A man named Gutenberg created a process using movable type, as it's called, because you could move the letters around into different places to make each page different. And it let people have a very consistent way of reproducing knowledge and passing it along to a wider audience.
Before Gutenberg, every book that you looked at was handwritten and hand copied. When Gutenberg printed the Bible, we think he printed about 200 copies. And think about what it would have taken to make 200 copies by copying it over by hand.
This is a title deed for some land in England in the 15th century, and the little seals at the bottom, which are made out of wax, are the equivalent of a signature. Most legal documents were written in that form, the exact same document twice, and then cut down the middle with this sawtooth pattern, and each party would take away one half of it. They'd bring those two pieces and fit them back together to make sure that there was no change or alteration in the document. But this is 600 years old. It's in basically fine condition. One of the great strengths of vellum is that if you take care of it, there's no reason it shouldn't last for 2,000 years.
There are many types of conservation. Here in our lab, we do book and paper repair. This is a drawing in 2 parts. Somebody was doing research in the collection here at the Huntington and found 2 halves of the same drawing, one in one box and one in another box. This side of the drawing has a lot of soil and dirt on it and is wrinkled from having been crumpled up.
So we need to get this drawing back into one piece. In order to do this, we're going to put it on a light source.
We turn the pieces upside down and match up the tear one side to another. We use Japanese tissue and wheat starch paste to hold it together. It's a very unusual thing for us to find a drawing in 2 parts, and it was really fun putting it back together. The drawing comes alive and you realize that it might have been many years since somebody has seen it this way.
One of my favorite books in the library is John James Audubon's Birds of America, printed in the 1820s and early 1830s. It's an enormous volume that shows all the birds of North America drawn life-size.
It's what we call an elephant folio. It had to have special paper made. The plates that he had engraved of the images were large, and then all of those plates were hand-colored.
Audubon made the pages large so he could show a great deal of detail, but he also wanted people to understand what the life-size bird looked like. So for the really big birds, Audubon had to draw them with their necks folded down. For the small birds, there are many birds on the page because he drew those life-size as well. It's really visually stunning to look at.
Principally, people come to the Huntington to look at the original materials. And even though we may have a digital copy, let's say, of Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, there's something that you might not be able to discover in a digital image. And one example of that is where Franklin has written over something he wrote previously. The digital image can only capture the surface, but if you look at the original, you might be able to see what he had written before. Some of the things that we have that George Washington had in his possession are the orders that he was given by the Continental Congress to take over the army at the beginning of the Revolutionary War. It is such a thrill, even for me, after 40 years of doing this sort of work, to hold a document like that in my hand and understand that this was in the hands of George Washington.